For this paper, I chose to write about the transformational experience of becoming my father's caregiver after the untimely loss of my mother 3 years earlier. The generation caught between raising their own children and being catapulted into caregiving for parents is referred to as the sandwich generation. After my mother's passing, my father did his best to manage living independently, but his health was declining largely from feelings of depression, and to make matters worse, he was experiencing significant financial burdens. The largest burden occurred when he, under duress and without the consultation of family, elected a monthly stipend from my mother's retirement account rather than a lump sum payout. This decision left him without the means necessary to pay his mortgage and bills. After consulting with my siblings, we made the difficult but necessary decision to allow his house to go into foreclosure and move him across the state to live with my family. At first, the decision was filled with positivity and hope for brighter days ahead. We transformed our fourth bedroom into my dad's private oasis, and he was all smiles, knowing he could live the rest of his life comfortably and surrounded by loved ones. His transformation was almost immediate as his daily medications were now managed, his dietary needs met, and his emotional well-being restored. However, life as a wife, mom to three, and now caregiver wasn't without its sacrifices and continual exhaustion. When I felt I was adequately meeting my father's needs, I often had regret for not being more present with my husband and children. In an attempt to foster some autonomy within my father, I gradually began to encourage more independence. I slowly removed some of the scaffolding I provided regularly and hoped for him to take a more active role in his daily care. Unfortunately, my dad became accustomed to my attentiveness and grew dependent on my presence for monitoring his self-care. Within, I could sense impending doom if he didn't take the reins towards improved health. In fact, I warned him about his slow yet steady weight loss and the increased likelihood for illness. In early October, my concerns came to the forefront as my dad was inflicted with COVID-19. Throughout his illness, I did everything possible to care for him within our home. That ended on a late October evening after I returned home from work to a lethargic, barely responsive father. A friend of mine in the healthcare field brought over a device to assess his pulse ox. When it read 74, we knew the only option was hospitalization through an emergency call to 911. Upon the arrival of the paramedics, my dad expressed his fears and distrust of hospitalization, but I assured him that he was in much better hands via the healthcare system than he was in his room. Eventually, he agreed, and I implored the emergency response team to transmit him to a hospital in the city, preferably Penn or Jefferson. To my frustration and disappointment, they drove the ambulance to Delaware Memorial Hospital. Upon his admittance to the emergency room, everything changed. His swab for COVID confirmed the diagnosis we expected. We spent hours in the ER discussing next steps. It was apparent he was scared, but I gave him reassurance that I would return the next day to advocate for his care. That promise was broken almost instantly when the hospital denied my many attempts of entrance to see my dad and collaborate with his care team. After what was a torturous 3 weeks of separation and angst, we learned that his nighttime nurses missed the signs of an impending stroke. We received the call the next morning that he suffered 2 strokes, one on each side of his hemisphere, that resulted in the snapping of his brainstem. We were offered a FaceTime session to say our virtual goodbyes after life-sustaining measures were removed. He passed hours later alone. My purpose in choosing this topic was to spread light on the complexities of caregiving. While it was the best decision I've ever made, it took its toll on us in every facet. Those 7 months were filled with my greatest joys yet deepest sorrow. My dad was my best friend, my mentor, and a wonderful grandfather to our children. His presence is still felt with us daily, and the lessons I've learned from this experience I take with me every day.